Welcome to KOIN Conversations. I am Brenna Green. We are talking all things soccer in this KOIN Convo. So today I am joined in our first segment by Sam Spiller, the managing editor for Stumptown Footy. Sam, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Benna. I'm excited to talk all things soccer. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we certainly have a lot to talk about when it comes to the Timbers, who, by the way, did us a solid today and did not have media availability this morning. Thank you guys for making it so much easier. I'm sure that was very intentional of them. Okay, if you could pick one word to describe this season for the Timbers, what word would you pick and why?
Oh boy. Um, it might be a hyphenated word. We'll see if that counts. Roller coaster. This Timbers season has been very up and down. It started off really promising. Well, backing up a little bit. The beginning of the season was marked by the big transfer saga around Evander, the star from last season, who had made it clear through no uncertain terms that he didn't want to come back to Portland. So it was a protracted transfer situation. They eventually figured that out. So that kind of defined all of the winter. And then it was like, all right, we have a soccer season to play that's still coming up. And it started out pretty promising. Portland got off to their best start in quite some time. I think probably like a decade or so. One of their strongest starts to the season, which is rare for the Timbers. For them to actually start off good in the spring. They were playing really well. The defense was improved. And then around mid-spring to the late spring, they started to deal with some injuries. The goal started to dry up, and they went on a little bit of a skid, which caused them to slowly but surely slide down the standings. And here they are right now with 5 matches left, but very much still in the thick of the race for the playoffs, which is better than it has been for the past couple of years.
Would definitely agree there. Just your key takeaways from their 2-1 win over New York on Saturday.
Yeah, that was the first half in particular was probably the most impressive the Timbers have played in 2 or 3 months. They were very dominant on both sides of the ball, really. New York barely got any sniff of the goal. The defense played really well. Finn Sermon especially looked impressive. As always, he's been the breakout star of the Timbers this season, 21-year-old center back Finn Sermon. Offensively, they looked connected. They looked incisive. They looked fast. New signings, Christopher Velde and Matias Rojas, both were really impressive. Rojas scored the goal in the first half, which was, just for his strong play. Velde should have had a goal. It was ruled off by offside. That was, just a couple inches maybe. Looked really close, but he looked really strong. He looks like the type of player that Portland needs to kind of help get the offense running. So that was the big takeaway. It was concerning to see their level drop off at the start of the second half. New York obviously scored the equalizer about, 20 minutes, 25 minutes or so into the second half, but it was just as encouraging to see them respond. Literally less than 3 minutes later, with Anthony scoring his first goal since early June, and helping Portland get a much needed win at home. It was their first win at home since mid-July. So they really needed that to stay in the hunt for the playoffs.
Yeah, we've been waiting for that Anthony goals. He's been getting through his injury stretch there. Do you think that this team still thinks about last year's lone playoff game and how disastrous that was?
I'm sure they do. If they don't, I definitely do. I'll wake up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night just thinking about the Vancouver Whitecaps and the beatdown that they laid off the Timbers in that play-in game. No, I think it really does because it was such a sour way to end a season, which had had a lot of bright moments and was an improvement for the Timbers. Um, we can debate whether the wild card play-in game is making the playoffs or not. They were considered a playoff team. But again, that losing in that fashion, I think it very much ended 2024 on a sour note. And I think it has given them a little bit of a chip on the shoulder of not only do we want to have a more successful season, we don't want anything to do with the play-in game. We want to make the first round of the playoffs outright, finish in one of the top 7 spots in the Western Conference. So we don't have to worry about that again. Um, and I do think that there is a lot of, from what we've heard from head coach Phil Neville, a lot of the conversation isn't around just making the playoffs. It's what are we going to do once we get there? how can we become a strong playoff team and see if we can make a run? So I think it very much still fuels the fire for the Timbers. Um, Added more so, of course, when Vancouver repeated the act in the first game of the 2025 season, and just elicited all of the bad memories once again.
Speaking of Vancouver, guess what? The Timbers are playing them in these
Yeah.
last, what, 5 games in the season?
Yeah.
Just what do you think about this stretch? What do they need to do over this stretch to get their best result? And what record do you think that they're going to have over these 5 games? Because, I mean, they're playing Vancouver, they're in the playoffs. FC Dallas and Houston are fighting to get in. Sounders, of course, in the playoffs. And then they play San Diego, which is shockingly the number one team in the West.
They are. There's a chance that depending on how things shake out, San Diego could be playing for the Supporter Shield for the best record in MLS that season, which I still have sad memories of 2021 watching New York City FC celebrate lifting MLS Cup on Providence Park. So I don't want anything to do with another team raising a trophy at Providence Park this year. So whether it means that Portland has to beat them or whether it means that they're not in the race, that I don't want that for the last day of the season. In terms of the last 5 games, there's some tough matchups in there. Obviously, anytime it's a Cascadia matchup, anytime they play Seattle or Vancouver, you kind of got to throw the records, throw form out the window. They're always going to be intense. Vancouver, especially, has been really impressive this season, and of course, they got even better by signing German international Thomas Mueller. Coming to MLS, coming to Vancouver, he scored a hat trick, I think, in their last outing on his birthday. So he's a really good player. Vancouver's resilience is really strong. We saw that obviously in play when Portland played them in the first game of the season. So there's some tough matchups, and Portland's got to get results. I think the first step is they have to win their next 2 home games. Like you mentioned, they play FC Dallas at home. I think in a couple of weeks, that's got to be a must win. And then, yeah, San Diego's really good. Portland played really well though when they played them earlier this season down in San Diego, and San Diego's form is dipping a little bit, so that could be a winnable game there. As far as the last 3 away matches, it starts this weekend in Houston. Portland's history in Houston has not been great. I believe they've won there just once in their MLS
You don't
existence.
say. I remember a certain incident in Houston a few years ago.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that
There's
led to
been
a
a
coach
lot of
getting fired.
yeah, that was not a good time in Houston. So, you know, that being said, Houston is not playing super hot right now. They dropped a result last weekend, let in a last minute winner. One of their central midfielders got a red card, so, bad vibes there. That is a game that if Portland really wants to like consider themselves, yeah, we're in the playoff conversation, we're going to be prepared to make a run. That's a game they got to win. I don't really care if it's pretty at this point. So anything that they can do to get a result. I think if they win those last 2 home games, if they pick up 1 win on the road, so that's what, 3 wins total. That's probably good enough to finish in one of those top 7 spots. Obviously, would love if they were to continue their unbeaten streak in Lumen Field in Seattle, where they haven't lost a regular season game, I believe, since 2017. So I would really love if they could continue that and get a win over the Sounders. But I think they got to look at that Houston game and their last 2 home games as the one that you really got to push for.
There have been so many moving parts on this team this year. Who's been the most impressive newcomer for you?
Yeah, I think barring Finn Surman, who he's not a newcomer, but he just played 1 game in 2024, so he's kind of a newcomer. I think other players that have been really impressive have been left back Jimmer Forey. He has really settled in almost from the first match. He looked comfortable and confident on in the back line. He's aggressive in his play, two-way player, can really defend and also attack. He started combining really well with Velde, their new forward that they signed. So, yeah, promising things there as well. It's been a little bit of late going as well, but last game was really impressive from midfielder Joao Ortiz. He he has yet to find strong consistency, but he had maybe his best half in a Timbers shirt next to Davida Jala. Last game, he was really quick with the ball. He did a ton of good work off the ball. with the unfortunate news of Felipe Carbajo getting hurt just 2 games into his Timbers tenure after being signed in the summer window. Portland going to need somebody in the central midfield to step up. And if Joao Ortiz can find consistency and play like he did against the Red Bulls, Portland could have a pretty strong central midfield kind of to build off of as they, again, yeah, hopefully push into the postseason.
What do you think it's been like for this team to gel this season with all of these moving parts, like I said? Because, I mean, they just added three new players, and pretty good players at that. Obviously, I believe one of them that they added is the guy who tore his ACL. So
Yeah,
that's
Carbajo, just brutal.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Whoopsie daisies. But I mean, just how do you think? Do you think this team is gelling right now, or do you think they still have a ways to go in terms of that?
I think they are. I think considering that this is Bill Neville's second season in charge of the Timbers, last season he was kind of coming in. It was kind of a slower off season. He had to get time to kind of get into things. I think this team very much feels like Phil Neville's team. And one of the big things that he's preached from the start, from his introductory press conference, is the team playing together, is playing for the badge on the shirt, playing for the players next to you on the field. And you can really see that in the way that Portland is playing this season. It's playing out in their defensive record. They've been much stronger on defense this season that they have in the past. Um, there's a lot of different ways that you can coach defending, but a big way is just having trust with the guy next to you. And it really does feel like that. It feels like there's a togetherness and a unity. I think you see how quickly those the new players from the summer, as well as some of the new players they signed in the winter, how quickly those players have integrated. I mentioned Joao Ortiz, Jim Rafori, Kevin Kelsey has had his best goal scoring season in MLS this season. There's still 5 games left. He's embedded in really well. Um, you look at even younger players like Ian Smith, the rookie who they just drafted. He has embedded in and he scored a goal this season and had some really good moments as well. That's a testament to, I think, the unity that the team feels and the fact that, even new guys can come in, immediately integrate with the team and start to contribute and start to play. Um, I think that has been one of kind of their X factor positives this season is that kind of sense of togetherness. And the fact that there's a lot of good veteran presences in the locker room, such as, Diego Chara, who is still playing soccer and pushing 40, which, my goodness, I strive to be as fit as he is when I get to that age. So it's really helped a lot.
You mentioned Diego, so that leads perfectly into my next question. He has a club option for next year. If you know the Portland Timbers, I mean, Diego Chara is the Portland Timber. Do you think that the Timbers are going to pick up that club option next year?
I sure hope they do. And I think they will just for that, like I said, that veteran presence. Um, he subbed on in the game and looked really strong against the Red Bulls, helped close the game out, helped them, help refresh the central midfield. Portland has 4 or 5 really good central midfield options, and they're gonna need all of them come playoff time because there's a lot of minutes on those legs as well. And like, look, is he a week in, week out starter? No. But every time he takes the field, is he going to give 110%? Yes. I think there's very few players in the league that you can count on to do that. And so as long as they still can with Diego Chara, I think they still will. I think his goal was playing until he's 40. So as long as he still feels like he can do that, I think he's going to be around with the Timbers.
Okay, the big question. Does this team, they're in sixth right now. Does this team make the playoffs? And if they do they avoid that play in game? Give me your prediction.
Oh. Put my neck out for this one. I think they do. I think they do make the playoffs this season, and I think they do finish. I think seventh is probably the likeliest, just when you look at like the all of like the points and the tiebreakers and everything. I think seventh, maybe sixth is probably right about the ceiling for this team. But if they can play like they did against the Red Bulls last weekend at home and their last 2 away games, Portland has gotten 2 straight draws on the road. Draws in MLS on the road, away draws are valuable. Away wins are rare, but anytime you can pick up points away from your home stadium, that's huge. And the fact that Portland has done that already at 2 Western Conference rivals, that should give them some confidence with their upcoming away games. So I wouldn't be surprised if they steal a victory in at least one of their three remaining away games. So I think, those 9 points should get Portland right up into that like zone of the sixth or seventh. So I think they do it, and then who knows what the matchups go on from there because the playoffs in MLS are crazy and unpredictable as heck.
Sam, thank you so much for joining us. We are going to talk with KOIN about the Thorns after the break.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Welcome back to KOIN Conversations. I am Brenna Green. We're now going to turn our attention to the Portland Thorns. They also are in the thick of a playoff run right now. We are welcoming in KOIN, who is the Stumptown Footy Thorns beat reporter. Fook, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, doing good. Once I got your invite, I was like, oh, shoot, I got to make time for this, got to hop on and hopefully we can find some time to talk about your sneaker collection later on.
That's really the important thing here, I think. I think that's really the number one topic we should have. Okay, so the Thorns play this past weekend, a 1-1 draw. What were your big takeaways from that game?
Yeah, I think it was just it was a little messy game, really sloppy, a lot of bad giveaways, but Portland's back line held up pretty well outside of one moment where Chicago created chaos in the box. That's how they got their equalizer. But Olivia Moultrie got them on the board first with her 14th goal before she turns 20. So that broke a NWSL record. But yeah, this Portland Thorns team is just really, really tenacious. They're really aggressive. They press hard. And then for the road game, yeah, it was nothing different. They had their chances, they had their looks, but their final third has let them down this season. And this was another evidence of that.
Yeah. What do the Thorns need to do over these next 6 games to make sure they're their best? It seems like they're going to go to the playoffs. I believe they're in fourth right now in the league. But just what do they need to do to improve to be their best in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think the what Rob Gale has talked about all season long has been their final third, right? Without Sophia Wilson, Morgan Weaver, those top names and top stars, they've been figuring it out with young players, right? Like Raylan Turner, who has 5 goals on the season, Patrick Torden with 4 goals on the season, right? So they've been relying on a lot of young players. It's a committee basis right now, right? So you look at just Rob Gale just said the other day, if Sophia Wilson had this many opportunities, she would probably set a scoring record this season. I tend to agree with that, but the defense too, right? You look at the back line; they haven't had a shutout since the break came back from the break, and then they have given up 2 goals in 4 of the past 7 as well. So there's a lot of interesting moments in the back, and they'll need to clean those up if they want to move forward and host a playoff match as the top 4 seed.
You mentioned Sophia. There are so many key players out for this team this year. So to be completely frank, in my opinion, the fact that they're even in the thick for a playoff spot, I think is pretty impressive. How do you think they have been able to come together and do this season? Because I know before the season started, I was like, yikes, this might be rough. I mean, Sophia out, Morgan out,
Mhm.
Olivia Wakatoa out. And then
Mhm.
there's a bunch of other people with knee injuries. It's been quite impactful.
Yeah, I honestly, putting in my preseason predictions, I did not have them making the playoffs. Actually, just looking at so many young players, when teams tend to lean on young players, that usually does not go well, or bode well for teams, right? But Portland Thorns and San Diego Wave have kind of made that trend kind of non-existent this season, which is great. But with Portland, it's interesting because you look at all the injuries, like you mentioned, but the only reason why they've done it is one of the key metrics you'll look at is I think they're top 2 in expected goals and they're top 4 in expected goals, not including PKs, but they're also top 4 in goals scored, right? So, but Rob Gale has mentioned that they're underperforming by about 7 points, not including the Chicago game. So I think that's kind of the big thing. They've gotten their looks. They've gotten a new identity under them. They press very heavily, right? They suffocate teams, and that's where most of their looks come from. And that's that identity that they've had. And Sam Coffey has been a tremendous leader for this team. Taking over as captain for Becky Sauerbrunn and Christine Sinclair. the locker room has been gelled like no other. Every single player has mentioned it to me in media this season as well.
You know, I think that there's something to be said about Sam and what she has done, but I am not surprised. Like, one of my favorite interviews in all of sports. She's just fantastic. So I'm not surprised that she's been able to take over that mantle and have it not be super overwhelming for her. What do you think it's going to be like for her when all these pieces around the team are finally back together next year?
I think it's just her kind of all she talks about is winning. All she talks about is wanting a culture that involves every single player on the team. And the one thing I'll say about Sam Coffey is I do agree with you, Brenna. One of the easiest interviews, she will give you a long response to any question you ask in detail, just to help our jobs even, right? Because she comes from this background as well. But next year when she has all these players back, and hopefully Sophia Wilson will make a decision to come back to Portland. If that happens, she will have probably the best front line to work with in Sophia Wilson, Valerian Laboa, and then you talk about Kaya Hanks, who was coming on a strong rookie season as well before going out for the season. She's going to have everything to work with. She'll have Hina Sajita in midfield, Jesse Fleming, Olivia Moultrie, who's one of the best young midfielders in the league. She's going to have all this talent in the world to work with. I think she's going to have a contender to work with as well, in a locker room that respects each other, cares about one another, and kind of bonds with one another. She said this is the closest team she's ever had to be a part of. So it's pretty special what she's building there.
Sam is truly a daughter of a journalist, and for that, we thank you, Sam. Okay, so who has been your most impressive newcomer this year on this team?
Yeah, I think everyone would have said Kai Hanks before the injury, and I still believe that because they ran even in a few games they ran their offense around her. They made her the focal point of this offense. They were feeding the ball to the left side of the box at all times to get her as many looks as possible, right? But with the other player I'm looking at is Pietra Torden, right? Rookie who would have been a top 5 pick as well in the draft if there was one. She's been fantastic. The technical ability, the finishing ability has been there. And now she's just trying to get adjusted to the physicality of the league, just the demanding, the grueling schedule. But for a forward to play the way she does, it's pretty unheard of, right? Just like you look at all the skills, the talent, just her IQ on the pitch, it does not get any better than Pietra Torden. Bright future ahead for sure.
Looking ahead to the playoffs, is there anybody who can beat Kansas City this year? In case you're not paying attention to the NWSL, Kansas City has 50 points. The next closest team is Washington with 36. Okay, yeah. So can anybody beat that team?
Yeah, so that team is going to win the Shield for sure. That's already pretty much a done deal, right? Nobody's going to catch up to them there. Washington Spirit just played them to a draw this past weekend. So I think if there's anybody that's going to beat them, it's going to be one of these, it's Washington Spirit, I feel like, and then there's everyone else, right? So Washington Spirit and the Current seem like they're 1-2, and they're going to go into the playoffs 1-2. And if Trinity Rodman can kind of catch fire the way she's, before this past game, she scored a brace, right? So if she can catch fire, anything can happen with their team. Their team is stacked as well. And then I'm looking at Orlando. Orlando's just struggling down the stretch, but they just added one of the best wingers in the world in Ovalle. So looking at them to kind of get their bearings back in order, even without Banda. And then I know everyone's going to be wondering, how about Portland? I think Portland, it's interesting because Portland can't beat them on the road. Portland can only beat them on a neutral site or at home, right? And they're not going to be able to host them in the playoffs. So can Portland get into, like a 3 seed where they have to face off against the 2 and then not face Kansas City until the road? That's their best chance and only chance, in my opinion.
Where is the championship this year? Where are they going to have that
game? Park, San Jose.
Okay. All right. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, they want to get up to that 3rd seed so that if they end up playing Kansas City in the final, it's not in Kansas City. That would also be helpful for Thorns fans because guess what? You can technically get in a car and get to San Jose. Okay. But below Kansas City and
Mhm.
below the Washington Spirit, there's just so much parity in this league right now. I mean, you have 5 points
Mhm.
separating third from ninth. What is that just like for you to cover?
Oh, so one of the things I cover for All for 11 is the whole league, right? So every week I'm doing power rankings and I'm just juggling teams left and right, and it's difficult because teams can play their best game, one week, and then the next week it will become complete dud, right? So that's why it's special. The league is special just because you can kind of see teams, like look at teams on the bottom right now. Like Chicago hasn't lost a game, I think, in 7 weeks. And then Houston Dash was on the come up until their loss this week. And then Utah, I don't think they've lost a game in 5 weeks either. So it's just one of these leagues where you have to pay attention every single week. You can turn on a match and anything could happen. Not many leagues you can say that.
Yeah, that Utah loss at the time for the Thorns looked bad, but
Yeah.
not as bad now, thankfully. Um, but that was still not great, especially at home.
Yeah. That's true. No, if you ask them, like that loss kind of woke them up a little bit, and then they responded, the week after at Racing Louisville, who has become a really good playoff team.
Mhm.
And then getting the draw against Chicago, the way Chicago's playing now, is a good result. Obviously, if you look at the standings, you're like, "Ooh, is that a good result?" Because they've against the two bottom teams, they've only picked up 1 point, and I would agree with that, right? Like they needed more out of that, especially in a tight window where every team wants to host a playoff match. So.
Yeah. Speaking of which, where do you think this team ends up? If you were to guess right now, what seed do you think they have going into the playoffs?
Yeah, I really wish you did this interview after the San Diego Wave and Gotham FC
I
matches.
know.
But I think it's funny because this team really likes when people doubt them, right? If you talk to Bella Bixby, you talk to Sim Coffee, they'll tell you they don't really listen to the outside noise, but they know where everyone projected them as. They know what the expectations were. Rob Yell has mentioned it multiple times about how the only people that believe in them is their own locker room, right, and their own front office. But yeah, just to go back to your question, I think they are riding that kind of we are the underdogs, we're going to defy the odds. I do have them in the top four to end the season. I think they will find a way to pick up points, along the way. And this team, if you ask every single player on what their goal is, they want to host a playoff match in front of these, Providence Park fans. They want to have over 20,000 fans supporting them. So I see them making the top four. I do.
Okay, I'm looking at their schedule over the next few weeks here.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not easy,
Yeah.
Let's see. We have the Wave, which is going to be difficult on Saturday, and then yeah, you've got Gotham, which is a playoff team, Bay FC, which they've got to win that game.
Yep.
Orlando, are they at Orlando? Seems like
I
they
believe
are.
so. Yeah.
And then Angel City and wrapping it up with the Houston Dash. If you had to make a prediction of what their record is going to be over that time, what would you think?
Yeah. I think there's a couple wins that they have to have. Like San Diego, I don't think they've scored in 4 straight weeks at this point, but Portland has allowed goals in 7 straight, so it's going to be interesting to see which trend keeps up there. But I do think Portland's going to wake up for this Providence Park match because they're going to be on the road quite a bit down the stretch. So I have them picking up points there, BFC points there. Orlando Pride, even with the Valle edition, I think Portland's a better team. Orlando without Barbara Banda has been a very hard watch. They have not been able to put together goals too often. I think when I looked it up, I think they only scored 3 or 4 goals in the past 7 games. So a lot of these teams have dried up, their scoring attack. Like talk about Seattle, they haven't scored a goal, I think, in what is it, 3 weeks as well. So a lot of these teams have not scored as much, but I think Portland can pick up anywhere from 9 to 12 points down the stretch, and I think that will be enough to get them in the top four.
Fook, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. That is it for today's Coin Conversation. So make sure to stay tuned to our soccer teams in Portland as they head down this final stretch. See you later.